And now, Anna-Marie, the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ivana, and thank you to the organizers for allowing this, for making this possible. And thank you to everyone here who has come to listen to me. So yes, I'm originally from the United States. My name is Anna Czaki, and although I've lived most of my adult life in Italy, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself before jumping into my presentation. And I've been working at the University of Trieste for the past 20 years, teaching at all levels from A2 to C1 and general English to EAP. So also soft skills, English, email English, presenting in English, formal debates. I have a lot of fun. And 2 years ago, I finally had the opportunity to go back to school and pursue an MA in applied linguistics at the University of Birmingham. I had a lot of questions. And now that I'm at the end of my studies, I actually have more questions than I started with, but I have found some answers. And one of the questions that I have, is this one: how can we use listening effectively to teach and learn a language? And this is the focus of my presentation and what I'd like to share with you today. Here's a brief outline, it's quite simple. So going back to my question, now I do listening in most of my courses, and I have worked with all different types of activities, from textbook activities, while listening, to preparing my own materials for the higher level students, the C1 students, for example, in international relations. I've used podcasts a lot. In fact, I really appreciated Amy Han's talk before. And these podcasts then lead into discussions. But what I noticed in my lessons was that always the same students tended to raise their hands, and always the same students would sit passively. They seemed resigned. And when I asked them, well, what is it? And they said, well, I'm just no good at listening. I practice and practice, and I just don't, I can't do better. And I'll just move this here. And so this demotivation is important because there seems to be this invisible barrier. And this is really important because this barrier is not just a barrier to listening, but also a barrier to learning language, as Field, who is an expert in listening and a researcher also in psycholinguistics. So he says that learners do not simply give up as listeners, they often give up as language learners too. And this is important because then this invisible barrier becomes a barrier also to their future potentially, right? So any situation in which listening is important, such as participating in meetings, conferences like this one, telephone conversations, getting a job, getting a promotion. So I went to the theory, and I thought, well, let me list all the points that might help me find a solution. And this is what we know from the theory. We know that listening is the most widely used skill. 45% of all communication is listening, and probably even more than that today for our students because they are doing so much online, pre-recorded lessons, etc. So listening has great potential. We know that the problem seems to be the lower level abilities. Now, what do I mean by lower level abilities? Well, for example, word recognition, identifying a word when it is in a chain of other words, when words are slurred together, being able to parse or segment the different words, recognizing sounds. It seems that some phonemes, which do not belong to our mother tongue, are actually not recognized after a certain age. We do not distinguish. I don't distinguish naturally the double consonants in Italian. For me, capello and capello, one means hat and one means hair. One has two P's, one has one P. To me, they sound the same. And I really have to teach myself to hear that difference. So lower level abilities do seem to be the problem. Also intonation and stress falls into this category. The level of difficulty, okay, so here we go back to Krashen, and Krashen says that ideally the level of difficulty should be just above the level of ability, so not too difficult. Motivation clearly is a problem. Now, being able to make your own choice leads to the highest level of motivation. So this is important to keep in mind. And also empowering by enabling, making instrumental. So giving the understanding, giving the idea that what I do can make a difference. This is extremely motivating, rather than sitting passively as a listener, for example, while the teacher plays the recording again. Empowering the student to listen. And then focus on process, not product. And this is Field, John Field, who is a researcher again, well, the same one, sorry, as before. And he says, it's not, the question is not just, so how many did you get right? Which ones did you get wrong? But why did you get those wrong? What was it that you didn't understand? Did you not hear the word? Did you not know the word? Did you not hear the ending? Did you not recognize the grammar? What about the stress, the word order? What was it that was giving you problems? And this goes hand in hand with Christine Go's advice, guide learners to notice. Guide learners to notice what? Guide learners to notice, their difficulties, of course, how the language works, the differences between spoken and written English. Sorry, I am a little bit nervous, I guess. So in my reading, I came across our familiar friend, the dictation, which we all are familiar with, but it seems that dictation has been redeemed. However, not to be used as a test so much, but as to be used as an exercise. Dictation has been shown to be extremely valuable in helping listeners segment words, which were the lower level skills we mentioned before, and recognize sounds, words. And the other approach I was interested in was the computer-assisted language learning, CALL. Why? Well, because it was new to me, and so I was curious, and also because our university had purchased a number of licenses, and I had been asked to oversee the use with this particular group of students, and so I wanted to investigate how it worked. So this is, sorry, let me see if I can move this out of your way. This is an overview of how my investigation was organized. I had two groups. They were both first-year students. One group was from the Language and Translation Department, and that was the group I did dictation with. The other group was from the Architecture and Engineering Department. They were both intermediate level. The number of participants here is different. Now, this is because the dictation group's course was mandatory, and I started out with a bigger number. The call groups was not mandatory if they were already at the level. So some students were already at B2 level and they were exempt from the course, and other students discontinued for personal reasons, but it was a small group in any case, which is a limitation to this study, unfortunately. The program was the same for both groups, except for the listening assignment. And the assignment for the dictation group was to prepare a group presentation. I assigned the groups. There were 4 students per group, but they could choose the text, any text. Some groups chose poems, others novel, plays. One group even chose an advertisement. And clearly it was only a small part of the text that they had to analyze, but they had to start their presentation with a dictation for the class. And again, they were free to decide how to prepare the dictation, whether completely blank dictation, they had to write all the words, so no visual support, or just eliminate some words. And they were to prepare this exercise and upload it to our Moodle platform because this was this course became online, right? Whereas the call group, their instructions were to engage in 1 to 2 hours minimum a week with Rosetta Stone, their software, and to hold them accountable because the literature says, and from my experience it can be true, the literature says that the drawback with the software with call is that students, after the initial novelty, they discontinue. They're not regular users. So to try to keep them using the software, I asked them to submit a weekly diary to the platform, which I looked at, and it was just a list of the activities they had engaged in and a comment on that. So I'd like to now invite you into before I do that, I'd like to just tell you how I gathered the data. And so I gave them Cambridge type tests, a pre-test and a post-test, first on listening and use of English, and one on use of English, which was the written one, and questionnaires for satisfaction and motivation. So it was quite simple. Now, I'd like to invite you into the class and show you a little of what we did. So this was the assignment for the group presentation. I really hope my pink glasses are not distracting to you because I realize they are a little bit funny, but my husband went out and got them for me and I can see so well. So anyway, back to our action research. They were to answer these 5 questions in their text analysis. I did a model presentation for them before they started. And this is a slide from one of the group's presentations. It says, I don't know if you can see because I've got this menu up there, but well, it says sample action, sample dictation activity. This group chose slam poetry, Steve Coleman, and I do recommend the slam poetry. I enjoyed it. And this is an example of the dictation, a part of the dictation that they prepared on the left. On the right, you have the slide they showed afterwards, so the students wouldn't see the whole poem clearly while they're doing the dictation. And I would like to play just the beginning of the presentation for you.
So first of all, we are going to do a dictation. Then we are going to talk about the genre. Then we are going to talk about the text analysis and the author. And the last part is dedicated to your questions. So tell me when you're ready so that we can start with the dictation.
So at this point, all the students online are downloading the activity. And they are to complete the dictation online and then send it back to Moodle so I can collect the dictations and have a look at them. And I give the students general feedback on the reading of the dictation, and we talk about how the ones who were doing the dictation did, and I give them feedback on the dictation as well at the end. So I'll let her go on and she'll just read this little beginning of the dictation.
I'm ready. Okay, so I wanna hear a poem. I wanna hear a poem. I wanna learn something I didn't know. I wanna say yes at the end because I'm sick of saying so. I wanna hear a poem about who you are and what you think.
And then she goes on. But now I'll take you to the other group. And this is a typical activity from the Rosetta Stone software. It's a video.
Good morning. All right, let's begin. So, as you know, because of the recent budget cutbacks, we've been tasked with cutting some costs. Thanks for sending us the accounting information, Alicia. So, where do you think we can tighten our belts? Joe, do you have any thoughts?
Well, personally, I'd get rid of the less commonly used items, such as individual gym memberships. Those aren't cheap.
Okay, Alicia?
Well, we might be able to shave off some costs there, but that might also lead to increased private health insurance costs.
Okay, so I apologize for the quality. The software clearly has better quality. This is my PowerPoint. Then after the video, they are given language focus on specific words and phrases, and they can move back and forth in the software as they like. And then there are also matching exercises, a lot of matching type exercises for comprehension and repetition, etc. So now we'll go right to the results. Now, these are migration charts, and these show the individual results. I wanted to show you the individual results and whether they improved or not. So this is how you read it. I've got this nice yellow cursor here. You've got the pre-course test results on the left, and you've got the post-course test results at the top. And the meeting point is the diagonal red line. So that would mean that they have the same test score on the pre-test and the post-test if they fall on this diagonal red line. And you see the numbers inside are the number of students who actually scored the same score here. The white squares represent 1 student, the beige squares represent 2 or 3. And so what we want to see is the white squares on above the red line to see that they improved. And as far down as possible, because the farther down, it means the higher score. So what is interesting here about the dictation group is that although some did worse on the post-test, most did better, and some did much better. Many did much better. The call group, no one did worse, and all of them did better, except the progress was small. You can see it's just a little bit of progress overall. Although, again, this is a small group, and there are 3 off the grid. That means that the results were so low that they didn't make it onto the grid, and I think that was due to technical difficulties, but this is something that I would have to find out about what happened there. Now, the use of English performance, you can see was problematic. We have very little progress, and many, it seems that they did worse on the post-test. And in my opinion, the problem here was really the modality, because whereas the pre-test was done in person, and they had the right amount of time to do this test, it was a Cambridge test again, the post-test was done online, and our instructions were to give less time for the online test, to reduce the time to the minimal. So I believe the time factor was a problem, and this may be a limitation of this study. So I may have to do this test again, either in person or again online, but give them a little more time. It would be interesting to do that. I will share just a couple of questions from the questionnaire with you regarding learner satisfaction, motivation. Now, the first question was, choose 3 ways that you would prefer using listening, and both groups chose films and videos as number 1. They both chose while listening activities as number 2, and computer-assisted language learning as number 3. Now, interesting, the dictation group, 40% chose dictation as a method they would like to use, whereas only 10% chose dictation from the call group. But this is also an interesting result, that the question is, has this course changed your views on dictation for the dictation group and on call for the call group as a learning tool? Has it changed your views? And most said yes, it has changed my views positively. And later in the questionnaire, they both recommend their approach for learning. So this is just a quick overview of all the results. Let me see if I can move this here. Here we go. Now we've talked about most of this. We didn't talk about anxiety. I asked them to rate their level of anxiety on a scale from 1 to 5 while doing the listening activities. And the dictation group said they were almost not anxious at all, number 1, whereas the call group rated their anxiety level at number 3. So this was a plus for dictation. So my tentative conclusions, hold on, let me see if I can move me down here. Okay, is that both methods are effective. They both allow students ample opportunity for lower level abilities. They help the student focus on the process, not the product, and motivate by giving control. The dictation group did seem less anxious, according to the questionnaires. I question whether it is because they worked in groups. The call group, the advantage is that they have ample opportunity, unlimited opportunity really, for more individual practice, but a drawback may be continuity on the student's part. And my final message is really what I learned is to help learners help themselves by giving them the opportunity to know themselves, their strengths and their weaknesses. And this should carry on into lifelong learning, ideally, right? So, and there's one more thing I'd like to share with you before I end. And this is a resource that I discovered in my investigation. It's a project by a colleague in Bari, Anthony Green, and it was interesting to me because this resource actually combines call and dictation, and I would recommend that you investigate it. It's free for now. So it looks like this, and what happens is, well, you can't see because there's a little turtle under the play button, and so the students can do this on their own, either for homework or even in class or in groups, and they play the audio, and these are all authentic recordings, and they type in what they hear. They can make the speed faster or slower, this little turtle here. And what's interesting is that you can, this is for teachers, you can create your own voice books, and you can make them as difficult as you like with support. You can, for example, it doesn't work here, it's just a screenshot, but if you explore this with the cursor, hints can pop up if you feel the students need help. So this was an interesting discovery on my part. And yeah, so that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening to me. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Anna, for your very lively and interesting, inspiring, and I would say demythizing, or whatever the word is, presentation. Now, let me hand over to the audience, which is eager to ask questions about investigating, listening processes and students. Are there any questions, please? You're free to ask. Anna, can you hear us?
I can hear you well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is going fine.
I have a question, but I don't know if you can answer it. Hopefully I can answer it. My students are usually the youngest ones are 19 years old.
Yes.
When I get them, they're already quite old. As in, there is a limit to what I feel that there is a limit to what I can do with them pronunciation-wise and intonation-wise. And I wonder how I could work on that, because, I mean, I tell them that it's fine as long as they're understood, as long as people understand them.
Yes.
But there is the problem with, so I try to teach them pronunciation whenever I can, because I feel that it does reflect on their listening skills.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Hewings, who wrote a book on pronunciation, absolutely advises teaching pronunciation for listening. Because when you help them notice how words sound and how words change, it also helps them then recognize the pronunciation when they hear it. And one simple way that I, especially this is for the really lower level, A2, B1 students, one way that I help them with pronunciation is I have them read out loud. And so when we do a listening activity together, first I have them read the questions out loud, so they don't really realize that we're working on pronunciation, where they think they're doing the listening activity and they're reading the questions out loud to help everyone warm up for the listening activity. But actually what I'm doing is helping them with the pronunciation to help them then with the listening. And it's a really simple way, but it's really effective because, and I also ask them to pay attention, and this is what Amy Han was saying earlier today. I don't know if you saw her talk, but to pay attention to the stress, because English is a stress-based language. So listen for the stress and stress the words that contain the most information, right? So that can help them focus their attention on that concept, on that word. I don't know if this answers your question.
I think it does. So I'm just thinking about something that I tell my students. So I went to the UK for the first time when I was 28, and I was a graduate of English philology. I was very proud of my English, and then I was supposed to get from London to Cambridge, get on the train and everything. And I asked for directions. I asked people in the street, and I had to ask 3 times because I couldn't understand them.
Exactly.
So I tell my students that story to, to reassure them when they panic, when they hear because, they're 19 years old, and sadly, they haven't, at school, at secondary school, they haven't really been required to speak very much. And a lot of the time, the teachers speak the mother tongue, so Polish in their case. And then they go to university and they absolutely panic when they hear a person like me, not a native speaker, but somebody, who speaks fast, doesn't use Polish at all.
Yes, it's true. It's
So I tell them the story and they go, okay, and they start panicking after a while because they just get used to.
It is true. I mean, I would really recommend to give them as much, enable them as much as possible, so get them to use listening on their own so they can familiarize with the sounds and try to read maybe or repeat what they hear, maybe work in groups, but in a way in which you're doing it as if it's embedded, so that they don't realize that the focus is to get them to listen and speak, but to do something else. So again, task-based learning, what we were, a reason for working, which distracts their attention from what you really want them to do, right? Which is repeat, practice listening, and speak. But I think we do need to spend more time teaching pronunciation and focusing really on those lower level skills, because that's the barrier, right? That's the barrier. And often it could also be cultural. It could be cultural. For example, I tell students the story, there was a friend of mine who was on the airplane, and every time the hostess would go by and offer something, he would want this, but he would say, she would say, would you like this? And he would say, thank you. And so the hostess wouldn't give him anything. And he didn't understand, I keep saying, thank you, I want it, but he never got anything. And then then you realize that, well, that's because if you say thank you in English, people think you're saying no thank you. You don't have to stress the no. And so the hostess goes by. In English, we say yes, please, if you want something. But so it's also cultural, right? But until students realize that the language works in a different way, and so I think really a great part of our job is helping them come to realize this and focus on the little things about language. It's a mystery, though, still. I mean, I think there's so many different great ideas, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge because I don't believe that a lot of the textbooks really prepare our students in this way. It is more parroting in the textbooks, or the focus isn't on the process. It's really often on the product. And we as teachers often focus on the product too, not the process. And so I think if we remember that, that can help, from my experience anyway.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna. Any more questions on this?
Again. Thank you.
If you want to follow up, or
I could go on and on.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to have a conversation. I so wish I was there.
If I may use
there.
the power of the chair, I would also mention the problem of teaching mixed classes.
Yeah.
When you have students who are really fluent and sound almost native-like, and then there are few students who really struggle to produce something that is understandable. So this is also a challenge. So I really enjoyed that you mentioned using online ways, online tools, how to help those students who struggle, to provide them some support, because we cannot do, we cannot teach in the same way when we have different types of students. So this is enough for me. Actually, this is not a question, sorry. Just a comment on the side. just to show that it's not really, it's really challenging to teach listening.
It is, but it's so critical. It's so valuable. You know, it really is, and
Absolutely, yeah, critical, yeah. Because this is where the understanding begins, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
Yes, communication.
With every interaction, yeah, it begins with
I had
that.
to ask 3 times. I could.
Remember, I remember the same story, you know, when I was young.
Yeah, it's normal,
would you recommend
but it doesn't have to be. So, you know, yeah, there's a really good also interview on YouTube with John Field, who explains you know, his idea about process versus product, and the processes that, you know, we've all studied, the top down and the bottom up, and how those processes really have to be acquired, but they are only acquired when you do help the students focus and give them strategies when they are learning. And for the higher level students, help them realize that they are not pronouncing there in the right way, and so maybe they are not also understanding in the right way. So pronunciation and listening really are two sides of the same coin, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, we agree absolutely also with your recommendation of John Field's book, because I think this is really instrumental. It's one
fantastic.
of the best books I've ever
It's a
seen.
fantastic book.
Yeah,
Really.
teaching listening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's right here. Where do I have it? It's right next to me. It's this one. Don't know if you can see it.
John Field.
Yes, teaching in the listening in the language classroom. It's a very inspiring book. This one, really great book. Yeah, and what the plenary speaker said today, I can't remember his name, the professor from Barcelona, also what he said, you know, about metacognition and allowing students to play the recording again and again and again on their own. So give them the tasks to do, you know, you have 5 minutes to do this listening task, but in a group or on your own, but you've got 5 minutes and you give them the audio. And this is easy to do online now because, you know, we just give them a link and they can listen as many times as they want. This is really useful because individuals, they have different needs and different difficulties. And if they have control and they see that they can improve, they see how they can improve, they will, and they will continue listening. So yeah, these are all things for me, really answered a lot of questions, all of these ideas. And so I'm going to keep playing with listening and try to make it a bigger part of my lessons because it is so valuable.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna.
Okay, so thank you very much for listening and having me, and good luck with the rest of the conference.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope to come another time to Brno.
Surely, we hope there will be another opportunity either here